Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Katz, and welcome to Tuesday's edition of WeAreSC.com's Inside the Trojans Huddle, where we tell it like it is. Friends, Inside the Trojans Huddle is a game-like panel discussion that is posted Tuesdays in the off-season and twice during the regular season. The huddle features WeAreSC columnists, staff writers, and historians. We start first with the pregame show, where we introduce our panel members for this special edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, and then give you the latest USC Trojans football news. Let's first meet Tuesday's panelists, a WeAreSC columnist who writes WeAreSC.com's The Monday Morass, Yay or Nay, and Sunday Takeaways. In addition to regular season football and basketball reports, he also hosts his own podcast show entitled Locked on USC. That's Marc Kulkin. The editor-in-chief of WeAreSC.com, columnist, national recruiting guru, and a graduate of USC, Erik McKinney. And a weekly WeAreSC columnist who writes Fridays the Obvious, Not So Obvious, IMHO Sunday, and is an active member of the Football Writers Association of America, your moderator and producer of Inside the Trojans Huddle. That's me, Greg Katz. Before we kick off this Tuesday's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, here's a recap in USC football news. Last week, Bet Online released the odds on 5 of USC's biggest games on the 2023 schedule. And of the 5 games listed, the Trojans were underdogs in 2 of those games. More on the Bet Online betting odds coming up in the first half of the huddle. On Sunday, former Alabama Crimson Tide defensive back Tre'Quon Fegans, who was a redshirt freshman for the Tide, officially announced he was transferring to USC. Fegans, who will play safety at SC, has 4 years of eligibility remaining. Fegans is 6 feet 180, was accompanied over the weekend by members of his family. It should be noted that the Trojans now rank number 1 on the On3 2023 transfer portal rankings. Also on Sunday, about an hour after the commitment of Tre'Quon Fegans, his 4-star younger brother's safety, Anquon Fegans, class of 2025, announced his commitment to USC. Anquon is the first USC commitment for the class of 2025. Anquon, who is the number 3 prep player in Alabama, is the nation's overall number 17 prospect on the On3 rankings. Both Fegans brothers are from Oxford, Alabama, and Thompson High School. Friends, WeAreSC's Inside the Trojans Huddle greatly appreciates your viewer and listenership, and we encourage those of you watching on sites like YouTube to click on the red subscriber and like buttons. It's greatly valued and it's free. You can also listen to Inside the Trojans Huddle on many available podcast sites. And a reminder, WeAreSC.com is offering a subscription special. You can get all the WeAreSC premium content for just $29.99 up to August 31st, 2023, or $9.99 per month. This offer includes all of the off-season recruiting and transfer news, plus it takes you right through training camp, right through the first USC first home game against San Jose State on August 23rd in the Coliseum. So with that out of the way, let's go to the first half kickoff. Panel, we start with some thoughts on the 2 weekend commitments from former Alabama Crimson Tide safety Tre'Quon Fegans, who will be able to play immediately, and his younger brother, sophomore safety Anquon Fegans, the first USC commit for the class of 2025. It should be noted, as we said, that both Fegan brothers played high school in the state of Alabama. So we'll lead off with Marc Kulkin. Your thoughts on this transaction over the weekend? Can we hear Marc?
Fantastic. Can you
There
hear
you
me
go.
now?
All right, you're good to go.
Yeah, no, it was great. Being able to get a player of Tre'Quon Fegans' stature coming to USC at this juncture, I don't want to say it's the final piece, but it's definitely one of those corner edges that you need to complete the puzzle. What they did at the defensive line so far through the transfer portal at the second level, if you want to include Jamil Muhammad with Mason Cobb, and now you add another player into the secondary to go with Christian Roland Wallace. USC found their nickel back, I think. That's if he's going to be playing safety, I think that's going to be his position. And if that's the case, and they've got someone who can now cover the tight end, as well as, have have the ability to cover the receiver out of the slot. I think all the pieces are there for Alex Grinch and his defense to get the job done. And you get a little bonus maybe in a couple of years with his younger brother, probably replacing him at the position he's playing.
Eric, what do you think about this? Now they said that both brothers, the younger one says he wants to play with the older one. Okay. So that was a good deal. I mean, we saw pictures of he was here with his family, his father, so on and so forth. Let me ask you, you're a recruiting guru here on WeAreSC.com. What kind of a presence does this make in the Southeast Conference? Because Nick Saban said not too long ago that the biggest threat in recruiting, the threat to them and to others, was USC, which was kind of interesting. What's your take on it?
I think it's pretty big. And a 2025 commitment from a safety from Alabama at this time, typically you'd celebrate it, you'd whatever, but then you start counting down the time until he's not in USC's class anymore, right? The SEC teams come. So having the older brother come in is clearly huge. I mean, to being able to keep the younger brother. Anquon is the number 3 player in a really good Alabama state class for that 2025 year. So this is not a throw-in. These are both 2 kids who can really play. When you're getting, and you've talked about this before, Greg, when you're getting a guy who's leaving in the transfer portal from a program, you want to know why. And especially when you go to Alabama and you don't play as a true freshman, which no knock on anybody who doesn't play as a true freshman in Alabama. That is a tough hill to climb. But no, he was a big time recruit. Alabama goes out and gets him. And now USC is showing these guys nationally. And this is from the Midwest. This is from down south. This is from the DMV area. This is from everywhere. Hey, come to USC. There's a spot for you here. They are recruit. I know that USC fans want them to recruit California and Southern California and lock those areas down. Lincoln Riley has shown, no, we're going to go get the best football players we can go get. And if you're at a place like USC, people want to gravitate towards there if you give them, if you put the light on, the moths will come, right? And so that's kind of what's happening. They're showing these kids, you can come and get it all at USC. You can play great football. You can have your name out there up in the lights. You can win major awards. You can win a bunch of football games. And these are the things that you can do now, going and getting these recruits. So no, I think it's a piece, right? This isn't your number one, the best thing that happened all offseason in the transfer portal for USC. But you start putting all those pieces together, and Deion Sanders and Colorado are going to get a huge percentage of the ink in the press about the transfer portal this offseason. It's wild what is going on at Colorado. But you start looking at the numbers and what USC did with kind of a more targeted class of we need a guy at this spot, we need a guy at this spot. Whereas last offseason, maybe it was like, we need good players, yeah, but we also need anyone who wants to show up. This is another one of those, hey, we might have a need here, fill some depth, maybe battle for a starting spot. And so that's where it's big, is you're seeing all of the players coming in this offseason, really, truly legitimate options to potentially start game 1 for USC this fall. And when you're talking about 14 guys coming in, that I think makes a statement for you. But no, being able to spread it nationally, being able to have an appeal for recruits and players from all different walks of life, all different areas of the country. It's pretty remarkable what Lincoln Riley has done in still. I think we kind of understate the short amount of time that he's done to get this thing to where it is right now.
Yeah, I think it's, go ahead, Mark.
I was gonna say, those numbers that Eric just gave, he used that number 8, the number 14, those are just the transfers. Of the 14, 8 are on defense. Of the 22 recruited players, only 8 were on defense. So the transfer portal was used to specialize exactly the needs they had to go get. And then recruiting is going to supplement those guys, backing them up. That would,
Yeah, I think that this, what he's doing is, to me, just a big Pete Carroll-like step. He is going into Southeast Conference territory. He's getting players from Alabama, which needs no introduction, right? He's getting good players that were thought of. And the spotlight now is on USC. You add Alexander, the Bear, to it, from Georgia. And then when you think about the potential signings they could get out of Florida, he's making big progress. And the transfer portal is allowing players to think about an option that they could take if it doesn't work out, or they didn't choose SC, maybe they chose Georgia or Florida State or whatever, that, hey, I'll check on USC first to transfer, because that's where everybody goes, if it doesn't work out. Well, look, just because it didn't work out at, let's say, Florida State, doesn't mean it's not going to work out at USC. So he's getting the best of both worlds. I kind of remember when Pete Carroll, they passed that stupid law that the head coaches couldn't go to high school practices. That was an SEC push. They knew it. They could feel it. And I'm going to tell you right now, they're going to feel this. That prophecy of Nick Saban saying, he doesn't fear anybody, but you better be concerned about USC. And, the more guys go, And, it may not be that, that you have to wait for a class of 2025 guy. It may be some guy in Alabama or Georgia. What happens if Matthews, the wide receiver from Georgia, decides to sign with USC? Is that going to cripple Georgia? Of course not. But it is going to sit there and start getting a lot of momentum as the years roll on. I think he's in great, great shape. The Trojan program is. And I think they have to recruit out of state right now, because the players that are already in state, they're gonna be there. I don't think they're gonna get. I think Lincoln Riley knows where their bread is buttered, so to speak. So to me, it's all good. It's all good. I'm really excited about it personally. All right, let's move on here. We're gonna change from recruiting to odds. As many of you may already know, some of the early betting lines, they call betting lines, aka odds, of many of the most critical USC football games for next season were released by Bet Online. Panel, let's take a look and get your opinions on some of these 5 released early betting lines. Do you agree, disagree with these betting lines? Tell us why. It should be noted that all 5 of these crucial games and the odds are part of a challenging second half of the 2023 schedule. So let's start off in order. Number 1, USC at Notre Dame. The Irish are a 1-point favorite. Marc Kulkin, agree, disagree? Why?
disagree. Look, I understand this game's on the road and Notre Dame is, you get the 3-point home field advantage. So if you're only favored by a point at home, that's telling me on a neutral field, USC would be considered the favorite. So I just see this offense clicking by the time they get to South Bend. And if the defense is 20% better statistically, keeping points off the board than they were last year, yeah, that 1 point is easy money. I highly disagree with it. USC is going to roll. They're going to break the losing streak in South Bend in 2023. Take it to the bank.
All right. The bank opens at what, 9? We'll be there. Eric, about you taking it to the bank?
Maybe not all the way, but I was surprised that Notre Dame was favored in that one. I thought that would be an easy USC as the favorite kind of installation. Maybe not a ton of points, but that game last year wasn't all that close. USC has absolutely gotten better. I understand Notre Dame went out and got Sam Hartman, and right, when you're talking about odds, especially this far before the start of the season, you want to throw stuff out that's going to generate interest and betting on both sides. But no, for me, I of the 5, I think maybe that was the most surprising to me that Notre Dame was favored in that one. Even like Mark said, even with it being in South Bend, I just thought USC, and I know we're talking about next year and not last year, but I think you got a sense of kind of where the programs were last year, and I don't think Notre Dame has gotten that much better than USC in this same offseason.
Well, I think the 1-point favorite is based on a lot of optimism about Sam Hartman, the transfer from Wake Forest. I watched some of their spring game, and of course, how much can you derive from a spring game? But I think he is better than Tyler Buchner was, who transferred, of course, to Alabama, so he could be with the former offensive coordinator of Notre Dame, Tommy Rees. I think the question is Notre Dame better on offense compared to USC better on defense? I tend to agree with Kulkin on this one. If they're 20% or at least 25% better, where they can hold maybe 14 points less than they have been giving up in the past, I think the Trojans, and again, it also gets down to field goal kicking. And, we have to see if SC's field goal kicker can, there'll be a lot of pressure on him with these series of tight games. But I think SC should win at Notre Dame. It really depends on the defense. I really have no question about the offense. I have none. I think that SC is going to roll even against Notre Dame, as long as number 13 is vertical. SC is going to be hard to beat. It all gets down to that defense. So let's move on to Utah at USC. Trojans return home, a 7-point favorite. Are you surprised by that? 7 points? Agree? Disagree? Why? Marc Kulkin?
I think that's a fair spread. Look, USC is going to be coming back from Notre Dame. You're hoping that there's not too much of an emotional letdown. But again, you've got Utah in front of you. And that team has beaten you 2 times in a row at Utah in the conference championship game. I have a feeling that this might be one of those personal games where the guys are going to, like, you know what? We remember you kept us from achieving the playoffs last year. We're going to remind you why we're chosen above you to be the conference champion. I think they're going to go in with that type of attitude. I'm hoping. Now, that said, 7 point. Yeah, at home, USC is going to roll. That offense, I don't know, in the games that were close last year, I mean, they won by more than 7 points outside of that Oregon State game. It really wasn't close on the scoreboard. So, yeah, take the points. You're good.
All right, Eric, are you going to take the points?
No, 7 seemed high to me. I don't really mind SC being favored, but it also is one of those things where Utah, to me, earned it last year. Again, I know, different year, different teams. Utah brings a ton back, though. I know the tight end's gone, Clark Phillips is gone, right? They lost some guys who were tough matchups for USC. At this point, when you still have moving parts and you can add more guys, it's kind of, clothing against clothing, right? The Utah program right now feels like it should be closer than 7 to USC. I will say the interesting thing is in every year prior to this, you'd look at the schedule and go, man, USC's coming off a road trip to Notre Dame. That's going to be a letdown the next week. Utah coming off, I think, a home game against Cal or something the week before. That would favor Utah. Because of the transfer portal and because of last year, I think the Utah game was a bigger game to a lot of the players on this on the USC roster. I don't think that there is that built-in Notre Dame hate for a lot of these new USC guys that have been here. They'll have been here for 6 months or a year or 18 months that they've even been affiliated with the USC program. So the idea of like the letdown after traveling to Notre Dame and then getting a team, I don't know if you'll get that this year, because I think they're going to be as fired up for Utah as potentially any game on the schedule, which is kind of an interesting wrinkle that the portal gives you.
Yeah, I agree. The only fear I have about Notre Dame is just from a physical standpoint. It's always a big physical game when SC and Notre Dame play. And if they can come out of the game fairly healthy, I don't have a problem with them playing Utah at USC. And it might be a little different if they're playing at Rice-Eccles, but the thing about Utah is they're an experienced team in a lot of areas, especially at quarterback with Rising. He's certainly not going to be intimidated, but you got Caleb Williams as your quarterback, as your leader. There's no way he's not going to remind his team and be motivated after losing to them twice last year. They'll be up for it. And I think they'll see the Notre Dame game as kind of like a season unto itself. If they come back after a win from Notre Dame, they'll figure they have cleared a big time hurdle. They can now focus completely in an optimistic way. Because if they lost at Notre Dame, part of it will be that they were injured emotionally, maybe in the national championship picture, and then they can't afford to drop another one. And this being Caleb Williams' final season, in all probability, a lot of attention is being placed to a playoff spot. If they beat Notre Dame, which I think they will, then I think they turn to Utah to be ready to go. They have all the motivation they need. And I think SC will be ready. Plus, I'm going to look at the crowd factor. I think if SC beats Notre Dame, the crowd is into it. And I think it could be close to a sellout, if not a sellout, for the Utah game. 7 points doesn't seem like too much or too little to me. If SC really gets ahead of Utah, I would say look out. Utah can't afford to let USC start rolling on offense. If they do, Cam Rising or not, I think Utah is going to be in trouble.
It was 17-3. It was 17-3 when Caleb pulled his hammy. So that's how quickly USC can score. That's
exactly. Let's look at Washington at USC. Now the Trojans, another 7-point favorite. Agree or disagree? Why, Mark?
Oh yeah. Yeah, this is we're in the home stretch here. USC, they've got what? Washington, Oregon, UCLA. And this is where, the pollsters, the playoff committee, everybody's watching and saying, all right, where are we going to start seeding these guys? USC at home versus Washington. Yeah, again, for me, 7 points is just not enough when you're talking about this offense. It just seems like easy money. So again, Erik brought it up, you brought it up. As long as this team is relatively healthy, Caleb was standing upright, and the defense has improved. At home, I'm going to take 7 points every single time.
Erik?
It's like Utah for me. 7 seems big right now, just because the if of the USC defense improving is still gigantic, right? After the first few weeks, I think you can start looking at that 7 and then decide like, oh no, that's got to move up or down. But out here where Washington, I guarantee you, players and fans think that their offense is step for step what USC has offensively with the guys coming back. Washington lost virtually nobody from that team that put up yards and points incredibly well. The wide receivers they have coming back, the quarterback they have coming back, it's right up there with a lot of USC's guys. Defensively, they have a lot of guys coming back too. So 7 again feels big. The home game for USC, and again, the offense, I'm fine if USC's favored. 3, 4, something like that at this point, until you see that USC defense. Both of those 7s for Utah and Washington, it feels big. It feels big right now. Again, it's college football. One of these teams are probably going to win by 15 or 16, just kind of how things go and how momentum can shift and a team can get going. But no, just on paper this far out where you just don't have a sense of what that USC defense is going to be yet. I think Washington right now, looking at it, could put up a bunch of points in that game.
Well, I tell you, there's a lot of people that think that Washington is better than USC in some of the preseason rankings, whether that means anything or not. I look at a 7-point favorite. We're not looking at, to me, you're not looking like 21-14. I mean, I could see a lot of points being scored on this one. I do think by the time SC plays Washington, we'll have a pretty good idea about the SC defense. The thing that Washington has is they've they have a quarterback that could give SC a lot of fits, could run around, athletic. They're physical. But I'm going to say all I care about this game, honestly, I don't care about 7 points. I just say win the darn game. Just win it. I don't care if it's by a field goal or what have you. They've got to get over this hurdle with Washington. I think playing in the Coliseum, another potential sellout. Wouldn't shock me. Probably prime time game, depending on what Washington's season's going. SC's, I think this is going to be like kind of like playoff football. And I wouldn't be surprised if Lincoln Riley refers to these last 6 games as playoff football. So I'll take the Trojans 7 points. I don't know, because Washington has a good offense. They have a tough defense. Just win, baby. All right, let's go to USC at Oregon. Oregon's a 3-point favorite. So this is the second time SC is going to be an underdog, at least in this particular opening betting lines here. Mark, you agree or disagree, and why? And it's in Eugene and yada, yada, yada. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they're the greatest program ever. So for USC to only be a 3-point underdog going up there, Trojan fans should feel fortunate. I got nothing to add to that. Look, they're only a 3-point underdog. Again, we're talking about it now. And if the defense is that bad and they're returning Bo Nix, hey, why isn't Oregon favored by 6 or 7 points?
All right, Eric, what do you think about that?
It's odd to me. So if we're going to say that home field is 3 points, then you're saying USC and Oregon are even, but USC is 4 points better than Washington. Washington, I think, is a better program, better team than Oregon. I mean, that Washington won last year, so that math like doesn't jump out as making a ton of sense. I get Autzen is a tough place to play. Even though it's at home, the Washington game has me kind of more on edge at this point than going up to Autzen. So again, that would be maybe the Oregon by 1 that Notre Dame gets, just that little home field hook there. But from 1 to 3 at this point, this far out, I don't think it's that big of a difference. But having it to where you can sort of do the math and come to the conclusion that Oregon is a better team than Washington, or would play USC tougher than Washington. I don't see that right now. So I guess there's a tiny issue, but Oregon's got guys. They've got players. Bo Nix played, well enough last year. There's enough talent on there. They've done really well in the transfer portal too. It's gonna be a tough game, because again, you're talking about where that comes in the season and what USC has had to put out to that point. I mean, I don't know how much that goes into these early numbers or anything like that, but it would be a pretty significant statement for USC to go out and post like big win after big win in any of these things. I think, we saw some of that last year, Greg, where you're talking about just one point. Get out of it with 1 point and move on to the next one. And I think everyone affiliated with USC, I think, would be happy with that.
Yeah, you know what? I've been to Autzen Stadium 2-3 times, and the one thing I learned is they're obnoxious. The fans there, they really do get behind Oregon, and they really do a great job when Oregon's ahead. I mean, they like seeing people being thrown to the lions, so to speak. But when those Ducks get behind in a game at Autzen Stadium, you can almost hear a pin drop. And if SC can get ahead, stay ahead, and keep that crowd quiet for the most part, they're going to be in good shape. The deal is they got to get ahead, stay ahead. We don't know what the weather will be like, except it will be cold. It's in November. It really also depends on how hot and cold Bo Nix is. And again, when you get late in the season like this, depth is going to play a part of it. We don't know that. Oregon, a 3-point favorite, I get it, but I don't consider that something to be, concerned about. But I think that this is a game that, SC is going to have to really stay ahead. All right. the final, should we say, draft or betting line odds is UCLA at USC. The Trojans are, and I'll guess the term I should use is whopping 12-point favorite. Agree, disagree? Mark, is it going to be a rout?
Yeah, disagree. It's not enough. Look, UCLA, I know Chip Kelly is using the transfer portal to the best of his ability, and they're bringing some good players. They got, Kyle Ford came over from USC, and I think they've got some receivers that USC is going to have to contend with. I'm just not sure who's going to be their quarterback by the time USC plays them. So based on that, I don't know if UCLA has enough offense this year to make last year's game as competitive this year. You're not going to need a Corey Foreman saving the day. This game, I have a feeling is going to turn into a rout. It's going to be USC's statement game. Oh, by the way, we're on our way to the conference championship game in Vegas. See everybody else there. And UCLA, that was your final Pac-12 loss.
Eric, are you as confident as Mr. Kulkin on this?
I'm never as confident as Mr. Kulkin on anything. 12 again, 12 jumped out as high, but until we know who UCLA's quarterback is and how he can play, make it 1 million at this point, right? I like what UCLA has done in the transfer portal. They got a great running back. They got a really good offense. I mean, you look at some of the positions they filled: linebacker, defensive line, wide receiver, like Mark mentioned, is as good as that position has been over there, I think, in a while. If the quarterback's not figured out, you're not going to have a team that's going to play with a Caleb Williams led team. And so that's where I can see the 12 being there right now. If they figure out if the transfer who came over ends up being a guy who can do a lot for them, if Dante Moore is a 5-star guy that makes an impression right away and grabs it and he's playing better and better, I could see that coming down a little bit. But no, if you don't have a quarterback who can really play and is on his game that day, that number, sure, it could get pretty high.
Yeah, I think this has the earmarks of a possible landslide. Dante Moore's never played in the SC UCLA game. The pressure's different in this game. You can't honestly say that, it's a rivalry game. Anything can happen. I just don't think it's going to happen this particular game. SC will be saluting its seniors. There's a lot of reasons to say SC will be in the right frame of mind. And regardless of the national championship picture, this could be the game that, sends them to the playoffs in terms of winning the Pac-12, and then who knows what can happen from there. But I just don't see how especially in the Coliseum, that SC is going to, roll over and play dead on this one. All right, let's go over here to DraftKings. They released their odds regarding Pac-12 teams' seasonal win totals. So we can, let me just go through this very quickly with you. USC and Oregon are projected at 9.5 wins. Washington has 9 wins. Utah, UCLA, 8.5 wins. Oregon State, 8 wins. Washington State, 6.5 wins. Arizona, 5.5 wins. ASU, 5 wins. Cal, 4.5 wins. And Colorado, 3 wins. Stanford, 3 wins. Excuse me. Mark, what stands out? Do you think the win total is too high, too low for some of these teams, especially SC, Oregon, Washington? What's your feelings on that?
Yeah, as far if USC comes in at 9.5 or under, Lincoln Riley is going to need to buy some earplugs. As far as the rest of that, I looked at Stanford and I looked at Colorado's schedule. I'm seriously considering taking the under for both of those. That for those two teams, it's a race to 11th place. I mean, I looked at their schedules. It's a hard. Find me the wins. Find me 3 wins on either one of their schedules. Other than that, yeah, I'm fine with everything else.
I'll get to my point. Eric, what do you think?
No, I want to hear your point. So yeah, right. USC could be ahead of Oregon if you wanted to put USC at 10. I understand kind of keeping the half there to make it interesting, so you're not going to get a push at 9.5. I think the Utah UCLA is absolutely the schedule that they play. I mean, when USC gets Oregon and Washington, that means UCLA has the other side, and they've got Oregon State and Washington State. So that when Utah also plays Oregon and Washington, that can change those win totals pretty significantly here. I mean, Colorado is obviously going to be fascinating to see how quickly that gets together. I think I saw there was a note today about bets on them. I think they're like the number 8 team in terms of national championship bets this offseason so far, and they're also projected to win 3 games. So somebody's losing money in one of those situations. But yeah, everything else is like that feels like the pecking order of how things have gone at this point. Again, it's clear like that Oregon Washington thing is different than I would have them when Oregon's at 9.5 and Washington is at 9. But I think that Utah UCLA being even has a lot to do with that schedule. And Oregon State is right there in the middle, and I'm certainly not going to bet against them, going under that. Like they always find a way to overachieve. Although as soon as you peg them as being good, that feels like the year that they really slip and win 4 games. So maybe everyone can hype Oregon State up enough, and then they're battling with Colorado and Stanford down there at the bottom.
Well, I don't get the 0.5. That's just me. I'm trying to figure out what 0.5 is supposed to prove. I mean, they only have 12 games in the regular season. So how do you come to a 0.5?
Well, then you can't push, right? You either you guess over 9.5 or under 9.5. It can't be 9.5. If it's set at 10, you can bet 10 and they end up with 10 and you push and they don't get to take your money.
Well, I think that's very not nice of them. I think
it's gambling, Greg.
Well, you know what? I don't do a lot of gambling, so I'm not well up on it, although I do understand odds for the most part. But I see SC with 10 wins at the worst, 10 wins. We don't know how. I will tell you this. Yesterday, or I should say on Sunday, there was a get-together celebration of life on our late colleague Steve Bishop, and obviously with many well-known sports writers were there to speak. I spoke on behalf of WeAreSC.com, and after the ceremony, people, they click off and they start talking about the Pac-12 and what's SC going to do. In fact, Tim Tessalone was there, and he said, "Well, what do you think about the Trojans next year?" And I said, "Well, you tell me. We can't really see much of them." Because of the practice thing, and he laughed. But the conversation did turn around to Colorado, and there was a lot. I couldn't believe there was as much animosity about Colorado and the way Deion Sanders was getting rid of players. I don't know if it was so much he got rid of a lot of players, but they were quoting a lot of the stuff from the Athletic story of quotes of he brought me into the office and he said I pointed out where my strengths were and where I had to turn my weaknesses into strengths and yada yada, and then goes, you really tried hard, but you're not going to be part of our program. It was almost like, really? So there was a lot of feeling that could come back to bite Sanders and his attitude. Personally, I know when SC goes to Colorado, it'll be a holy war because it'll be earlier in the season. A lot of optimism there, but I don't know. I don't like the way they go about doing their business there. So if they lost every game, I wouldn't feel bad about it. Of course, maybe he'd get rid of the whole team if they lose, 5-6 games, and he'll just say, "Okay, I got to get rid of you too." So it's going to be interesting. I'll just say that with Colorado. All right, let's get to halftime. We have some quick hitters here. Today's halftime will be a series of quick hitting questions, answers underscored by the word potentially. So let's get started. Number one, five-star high school basketball star Bronny James, son of the Lakers' LeBron James, announced over the weekend that he will be attending the University of Southern California in the fall. How will this highly publicized commitment potentially help USC's football recruiting, Erik McKinney?
It's huge. It's the place where stars go, right? Like that's what USC can brand itself as when they bring in names like that. This is going to be when Caleb Williams shows up in GQ, right? This kind of stuff is going to reach far beyond just the sports world and get into full mainstream people that don't know about college sports. They're going to hear about USC athletics. And clearly he's with basketball, but he'll show up at football games. I'm sure they bring the basketball team out a lot. If I was the football team, I would try to get them out as often as possible. But no, it's big. It's name recognition, brand recognition, all of that. It's big for USC for every sport and for every student athlete at USC to be able to capitalize on that.
Mark?
He's got 7.1 million Instagram followers. He's going to influence somebody somewhere to take an interest in USC football that didn't have it before. So will it have an effect on recruiting? There's going to be some high school recruits who are going to say, hey, you know what? I want to go to the school that LeBron James' son went to. Sure. Will it be significant? I don't know. He's only going to be around for a year, maybe 2 years. So I don't know how much of an impact it'll have on recruiting. Potentially, it's going to open some eyes, though. Again, he's an influencer. When you're in high school and you've got that many people wondering what you're doing, what you're having for lunch, who you're hanging out with, who's watching your games, yeah, it's going to have a little bit of impact.
Yeah, I think it's going to have a lot of impact from my perspective, because I think that you'll probably see LeBron James it'd be shocking if he didn't show up on a sideline of a football game. I think the fact that Bronny James is there sends a message out to all athletic recruits, and no matter the sport, that if LeBron James' son is going to come to USC, it's the momentum. That must be the place to go. And you got Caleb Williams there. And how many times during a sports cast on national TV during the football season will they mention Bronny James or interview LeBron James? I mean, the brand name, I think Erik is right on the head. I mean, they're going to milk this thing for all it's worth. And it's good for both Bronny James. It's good for USC athletics, football, of course. I mean, I think I heard Scott Schrader was just euphoric. Scott, being our WeAreSC.com recruiting expert, was saying that he really thought that, here you got the two Alabama kids over this weekend. They're there when LeBron James's son makes, the big announcement. And, you can get caught up in that momentum. It's I think it's really a bonanza. All right, let's move on. Some might arguably say that USC is off to a slow recruiting start for the 2024 class, but things appear to be picking up now. Do you expect that potentially USC's recruiting class of 2024 will finish in the top 5 nationally, Erik?
Yeah, potentially, for sure. I mean, with Lincoln Riley there, with spots available, they could potentially end up with the number 1 class in the Pac-12, and that puts you right in the race for a top 5 class in the country. So again, if they come out and show drastically improved defense and they win the number of games that they feel like they can win, yes, this could be a big time class where you're pitching, we're going to the Big Ten, we're carrying on this now legacy, post Caleb Williams and all of that kind of stuff. And you're probably going to have a lot of holes to fill based on kind of, what we've talked about and looked at potentially going to the draft. So yeah, absolutely could end up in the top 5.
Mark, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's going to be the Bronny James effect, right? So automatically, look, yeah, what Erik just said is I'm just going to echo what he's saying. If USC is winning, everyone kind of got a taste last year. They were close. They almost had a 1-year turnaround from 4-8 to the playoffs. And to Erik's point, if the defense holds up their end of the bargain, recruiting is going to take care of itself, because when USC football is winning, Everybody wants to come here. High school recruits, and now you've got the transfer portal. It's almost going to be a race to who can fill those spots first, the recruits or the guys who want to transfer in. That's going to be Lincoln Riley's balancing act that he's going to have to play. So yeah, potentially, absolutely.
Yeah, Mark, you're absolutely right. I think that the offensively speaking, they're going to be tremendous on offense. So all guys that are being recruited offensively, whether it's high school or transfer, you're not going to worry about that. It's going to happen. We all know it's going to happen. It's how the defense looks throughout the season, how recruits are looking at it. I mean, I look at Oregon, and they have a head coach that's his forte is defense, and I look at how they're really making good progress on defensive recruits. I think SC has to show great progress defensively. If they do, I think they'll have a good haul in terms of defensive players, but they have to show progress on defense so they can they're going to be a top 5 nationally. It has to also include a lot of stellar defensive recruits or transfers. Hopefully actually transfers will fill a spot, but the defensive guys from high school will be a foundational going forward. All right. Question 3. Is Deion Sanders and Colorado potentially a future recruiting threat to USC and Lincoln Riley, Erik?
In terms of getting a guy here and there, sure, absolutely. Like he, you saw it with Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter is a phenomenal football player, wide receiver, corner, could have absolutely gone to any school in the country, played for any coach in the country, gravitated to Deion Sanders, and he'll get guys like that. In terms of putting together big time classes and making it so that Lincoln Riley is missing on a ton of guys and can't put classes together, I'm not going to say that really anybody is a future threat to that. So no, he'll click with some guys and he'll get, I mean, for Colorado, right, it's win-win. Like your name is out there and you're getting players that you absolutely would not ever have gotten before this. So he'll take a guy that Lincoln Riley wants every once in a while, I think. Is that a recruiting threat? I don't know if I call it that.
Would you call it that, Mark?
No, he's going to be a nuisance. I guess that'd be the best way to describe him. I mean, if you're talking about the secondary specifically, I think Coach Primetime probably has a little pull there. I mean, he's shown that's his strength right now, where he's able to flip kids from his own alma mater. We brought up Travis Hunter. Who's the other kid they're bringing this year? Marion, another guy. So if you're talking about guys who want to play cornerback, sure. Other than that, Colorado's it's a grease fire right now. You don't run 53 guys off in 1 year. In less than how long has he been there? That's how many guys have left. And he's only gotten 37 guys to return or to transfer in. There's an imbalance there. So until Coach Prime's attitude improves, I think he's going to have a hard time recruiting, because that type of stuff, it floats to the top quickly. And you're going to have families and high school coaches that are going to have nothing to do with him.
Yeah, I think his attitude, his strength is his weakness. I think that he looks at these teams, his college team, as like an NFL team, and you can't treat college players the way you treat an NFL team and just cut them and slice them and dice them, because you're going to be dealing with parents. You're going to be dealing, as you know, with players. Players are going to talk. What happens when they don't win? How is his attitude going to be towards his team? Is he going to say, I need to cut more players? Does he make them feel as though they're the reason that they're losing? How much responsibility will he take? I think he'll take the responsibility. It's what he does while he takes the responsibility. I could see if he doesn't do well, of course, he's going to have obviously other years to do better, but I think I don't think he has a big window to turn the program around, so to speak, because I think that it's all about how people feel about him. He's a very controversial person. He was even when he played, you know, the chains, the whole thing. I mean, either you love it or you don't love it. And it's going to be very interesting to see how that relates to whether they win or they lose. All right, where is potentially the best ticket source to secure USC tickets in the secondary market? Think of going to Notre Dame, think of going to Oregon, think about the big games in the Coliseum. Where do you think is the best place to start checking for ticket prices? Is it StubHub, SeatGeek, TickPix, Barry's Tickets, another source? Eric, where do you go?
Yeah, you should go to our site. You should go to WeAreSC.com and ask who's got extra tickets. That's the best, unless you have a bunch of extra arms and legs laying around and you can pay some of the secondary market markups. That's the best place to start for sure.
Mark, you're in need of tickets. Where are you going?
That was the only answer. I knew he was going to take it. That is the only answer. I haven't bought a ticket off the secondary market, and I can't tell you how many years. You hear about these fees that Ticketmaster and everybody's charging. Yeah, go to WeAreSC. Ask who's got some extra tickets. They'll sell it to you at face value or maybe slightly above, and they might even throw in a parking pass. You never know. So
well, that's the big key, the parking pass. I tell you what, it's all about the fees. I know I've gotten seats from StubHub, SeatGeek, yada yada. You always have to. The way they do it is, unless you specifically say, "I want to know what the fees are included," all of a sudden you think you're getting a great deal, and all of a sudden when it's time to plop down a credit card, and all of a sudden you go, "Say what?" $75 in fees. You just go, "This is ridiculous." But I agree. If you're going to get tickets, if you can get them through a USC fan from our member sites, that would be the best way to go. If you can make sure you can make a connection to get a hold of those tickets, that would be the best way to go. And perhaps that's something that we should consider on our site, to have maybe a ticket exchange where people aren't ripping off SC fans with tickets. All right, let's wrap up halftime here with there's been a number of projections that have been floated if the 2024 Big Ten remains two divisions. Where potentially do you think the Trojans will be placed, and where will UCLA be placed? Will they be placed in the same division? What do you think, Eric? Which way they're going to go?
I don't think that there are going to be two divisions. I think that all conferences are probably headed that way. I've seen kind of the 3-6-6 where you get your pod of 3 teams that you play every year. And I think that's probably the way it goes. And I would certainly guess USC and UCLA play each other every single year when they go there. Now, if it is where USC is playing the same 3 teams every year, then it gets interesting, right? Do you pair a USC up with an Ohio State and make them play every single year? I think when you see that 12-team playoff, and when you look at the last couple of years and who would have made it, you can have some of what we always accuse the Pac-12 of being terrible about, right? Not protecting your best team that year. I don't know if you have to do that anymore. I think you can make USC and Ohio State play every year, Michigan and Ohio State and UCLA and Penn State and all those teams. You can set up those games during the regular season, because if they're counting for less, you want to have more big ones, right? To draw eyes and to get hype up and all of that. And then you're not hurt when it comes time for the playoffs. Oh, you lost one game, you can't be in here anymore. If USC lost to a number 2 Ohio State, a number 6 Michigan, or whatever that is, you're still probably right in the thick of things, in that top 12 there. So that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see USC, UCLA stick together, and USC, if you want to give them a Northwestern every year or whatever, but then one of those Michigan, Ohio State, some way to make sure that, right, there's a reason we're going to the Big Ten. Those teams are coming out to LA, or USC's going out there, and you don't end up with, you're just playing Maryland, Rutgers, Purdue as like your only Big Ten matchups for the year. I mean, I know the schedule won't allow something like that, but to make sure that USC is getting those big games would be fun for me.
Yeah,
For
Mark,
everybody, really.
Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking about this before we started the show, and I'm thinking, well, the way they're doing it now is they make sure Ohio State and Michigan, they're in the same division, to kind of eliminate each other from going to the conference championship game. I'm wondering if they're going to want to use the same thing with USC and UCLA, kind of play them off that way, keeping them in opposite or in the same division, so only one LA school can be represented in a conference championship game. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how they play this out. If they're going to try and keep some of the Big Ten conference tradition the way they have it, or are they going to now start expanding and looking at the 12-team playoff, to what Erik was talking about? And I mentioned this before, get used to having 2 losses on your resume and being in the playoffs, and potentially having 3 losses, because if you're losing to Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, and you're 10-3, that's a pretty good resume, even with the losses.
Well, I would say it depends on how bad the losses are. If you get blitzed, I don't think that's going to add to your resume. I think that what you'll see is, I think, a little reach back in tradition. I could see on a Saturday, 9 o'clock in the morning Pacific time, Ohio State and Michigan, followed by USC and UCLA, or they could have 3 big rivalry games. Have Ohio State and Michigan at 9, and then maybe at 12 o'clock they, maybe Penn State versus Wisconsin or something where there's a big rivalry there, and then the night game could be SC UCLA. And if they go by one division, this could really have quite a bit of drama, I think. So I think, remember, they have a new commissioner. He's from the television world. He'll be looking at rankings. He'll be looking at all of these sorts of things. He seems to have a very interesting background. I will say this, that they're going to be in a lot better shape than the Pac-12 is going to be, or Pac whatever it's going to be. So we'll see how that one plays out. All right, let's move to the second half here. ESPN's Marc Schlabach has updated his national top 25 power rankings based on spring ball and the second transfer window. Schlabach has moved the Trojans from number 7 to number 4 in the country. For the record, Schlabach's top 10 are as follows: 1 Georgia, 2 Michigan, 3 Florida State, 4 USC, 5 Ohio State, 6 Alabama, 7 LSU, 8 Penn State, 9 Clemson, 10 Texas. It should be noted that Schlabach also listed in his updated top 25, he has Washington at number 12, Notre Dame at number 13, Utah at number 14, and Oregon at number 15. Panel, your opinion, are you prepared to support Schlabach's rankings that USC is indeed the preseason number 4 team in the country, at least on paper? All right, I'll start off here since we're a trio here. I think still SC is, until I see that defense, I can't really support number 4 in the country at the moment. I think there's somewhere between 6 and probably 8 or 9, only because of the defense question marks. I understand the Georgia, I understand Michigan, Florida State I didn't quite understand. Is SC better than Ohio State on paper? Ohio State's got some rebuilding to do. There's the Alabama question at quarterback. LSU seems to be coming on. Penn State, they're saying, is one of the best Penn State teams in a while. So I think the one that annoys me is number 10, Texas. I just feel like everybody wants them to be so good, and until they prove it with Sarkisian, I'm going to hold off my excitement there. But that's just my take on it. Panel, what do you think, Erik? Do you think that SC's number 4 in the country? Are they appropriately placed?
I can defend 4, right? You said 6, which if you slide them behind Ohio State and Alabama, they slide to 6. And then you talk about quarterbacks at this stage, and Caleb Williams jumps SC back to 4 over 2 teams that will probably figure out their quarterback situation, but just lost the top 2 picks in the NFL draft. So No, not a huge problem with 4, right now. There's a chance that you could come in at 4 and not have your defense together in game 1 and see a pretty significant drop when it comes to those power rankings. But I mean, they're going to score. USC is going to score a ton of points, and their offense is going to make it so that they can win every game. It's one of those things where people say a lot, oh, well, they have to win games 56-55 or 45-42 or whatever it is. If your offense is going to show up every single time out and let you do that, that's better than where a lot of programs are right now. So yeah, 4 is fine based on what USC has coming back and on paper, what they have coming in. Sure.
All right. So big support for number 4 from Erik McKinney. Marc Kulkin, are you on board with the editor?
Yeah, I'm on the same page with Eric. I mean, I think USC is a lot closer to Mark Schlabach's number 4 than Dennis Dodd's number 12.
That was I couldn't understand that one.
Yeah, and he had Washington way up there. So yeah, Eric he stated the case very eloquently. Look, everybody's focused on USC's defense needs to get better. When are the voters going to start shifting their paradigm to it's not a defensive game anymore. It's an offensive game. You got to be able to score points, and you just need your defense to, be good. They don't have to be great. I don't think Georgia's defense last year was great, but they were really proficient on offense. So again, if Alabama is looking for a quarterback and that's why they're behind USC, that's telling me that, maybe defense isn't the end all be all right now. If they're putting such a heavy emphasis on the quarterback position, USC is going to score points. USC's defense gave up on average 29 points last year. They're 20% better than that. They're giving up 24, 25 points. And if USC's scoring 41, I don't know. My arithmetic says USC's undefeated.
Oh, wow. All right. Well, with that note, let's go on. Assuming that quarterback Caleb Williams is the first player taken in the 2024 NFL draft, which Trojan will be selected following Caleb next draft season? This is an interesting one for me. Part of me would say Kellen Bullock might be the one on defense, but I think there's a lot of candidates that haven't separated themselves. I think there's some receivers that could follow Caleb. I'm not saying first round, but I'm just saying we're talking about who will be the next Trojan selected in the draft. Although, we have to know who's going to be eligible for the draft. But right now, I will kind of say Bullock, kind of with, okay, he's the one that seems to surface for me. What about you, Eric?
Yeah, I think Kalen is kind of the safe pick. Again, it's a passing league, and that kid can cover with the best safeties out there nationally. And so that's what I think will get a lot of eyes on him. I'm curious if you think teams left their pick for Caleb on the podium as they were leaving this year's draft, just to get it in early enough, and in case they got the number 1 pick. Just here, we're going to leave this here in case we end up with number 1. But then you're right. There's a big group, right? Based on, I think this season is going to tell a lot, right? If Jonah Monheim lights things up at right tackle, now that's interesting, because if he's going to play right tackle and not left tackle, our team's comfortable going high on a guy who hasn't played a lot of left tackle. Typically that's going to be your first round pick, is a guy who's going to play left tackle for you. And then that wide receiver group, who comes out of that group, right? Dorian Singer is a guy. Brendan Rice has all the measurables. Mario Williams is a guy who's kind of flashed. Does someone from that group really take a huge leap? Because right now, none of them are coming into this year with what Jordan Addison brought into his 1 year at USC. And so, yeah, you've got a lot of different guys who could potentially turn in a big time year and then shoot up that draft board. But in terms of what they've done so far, the attention they've gotten, postseason awards, all that kind of stuff, Kalen Bullock, I think, is kind of the safe answer as the number 2 guy right now. Again, he'd have to decide to go early, though. Not a given that he would absolutely leave after this year.
What do you think, Kulkin?
Yeah, Eric, he kind of put the asterisk next to Jonah Monheim's name. I had that written down as well. The other name that I put an asterisk next to if he decides he wants to leave, he's a redshirt junior this year, is Jacoby Covington. It's a passing league, and you don't grow cornerbacks the size of Jacoby very often. So he could be that guy off the board first, after Caleb Williams. One, because he can cover. Two, he's also physical and he's shown he can tackle. And I think that gives him the step or the advantage above Kalen Bullock. We'll find out. So again, depending on who wants to leave early, I think Jonah Monheim definitely belongs in that category. I'm bringing up Jacoby Covington's name. After that, I think USC is going to have more players drafted, but I don't know if they're going to have that many highly drafted players when you go down the list. Christian Roland Wallace, Keon Bars, Tyrone Taleni. I mean, again, guys are going to get looks. Marshawn Lloyd.
Yeah, I think that I think as many, if you're going to be optimistic about it, I think they could have as many as 16 guys drafted in the 7 rounds. Yesterday or the other day, as I was saying at the Steve Bishop Celebration of Life, my former junior high quarterback, who when I started my early coaching days was there. His name is Gary Klein, covers the Rams, and I asked Gary about Caleb Williams. Are the Rams interested in? I know they're stockpiling draft choices. Could they make an attempt to trade up and give a lot of it up to secure the number 1 overall pick? He said it's conceivable, but he didn't think they had enough really high draft picks, that they could entice somebody with. But he says, they're willing. They've shown in the past they're willing to put it all on the line. I tell you, if Caleb Williams went to the Rams, what kind of an impact would that have, both on and off the field? That would be, to me, like a bonanza. Now, heading into the 2023 season, if Caleb Williams is the most valuable player on the USC team, who do you think at this point is the second most valuable player? I'm going to look at the defense. I think that Mason Cobb could be right there as what he's shown so far. And if you got a strong inside linebacker, you can do a lot of things in a lot of ways. I'm not prepared yet to say that Bear Alexander is going to be the second most valuable player, because I want to see how he performs. Same thing with Anthony Lucas, but it's possible that in the end it could be Cobb. So what do you think, Eric?
Yeah, Cobb was the guy that I was going to go with. Lincoln Riley mentioned this spring, hey, we're really deep at inside linebacker, but if you start looking at it, if they lost him, right, just out of the lineup, off the field completely, it thins out pretty quickly when you're asking those guys to also play on special teams and move around and do all that kind of stuff. So yeah, he was going to be my pick. I'm not as hesitant as you to say Bear Alexander is that guy. Again, what he allows you to do if he's going to show up and play well and be the guy that everyone expects him to be, what you can do around him, what you can do with your depth, what he lets you do with those other guys, I think is what makes him so valuable, and what you can do with him too, right? Move him around and the stats that you assume he's going to bring, and that position, right? If you can get something that's an AA plus up there on that defensive line, that makes everybody better. But I certainly with you, defense, front 7, right up the middle, being the number 2 MVP outside of Caleb.
Who is it for you, Mark?
I look at it this way. And I actually wrote about this earlier in the year. Who do you not want missing on your offensive line? Your starting center. Well, right now, you take Justin Dedich off that offensive line. Right now, they're still trying to figure it out. You've got 2 constants. You've got Jonah Monheim, whatever position they're going to play him at, and you've got Justin Dedich. I don't know if they're in a position to lose. Well, and he was called the offensive line's most valuable player. I don't know if they could afford to lose him right now. So while you bring up the Bear Alexanders, which, you know, the defense is going to be important this year, there's no denying that. Right now, to me, if there's one player USC cannot afford to lose, I got to go with their starting center.
Okay. Let's finish out the second half with this kind of a loose end question. Panel, the first game against San Jose State isn't until late August. What suggestions would you give USC fans to make it through the next 4+ months? Okay, I just wrote a column on Sunday on suggestions what to do. Watch YouTube, go to Trojan store, go out and do that. You know, a number of USC activities. You start booking reservations if you're going to go to away games, and I would suggest you do it now. And things of that nature. Erik, what would you suggest to our listeners to pass the time away constructively for the next 4+ months to at least dabble in USC football, and let's not forget the college football magazines, of course. So what would you recommend?
Yeah, you're sending people too far away. Watch this channel and go to WeAreSC.com, join the message board, and talk to USC fans and pass the time that way. That is the best way to spend your time. Get on it when you wake up in the morning. Maybe shut it down when you go to bed. Maybe not. You may want to check it overnight in case things happen there. That's the best way to spend your time.
Well, you know what, that to me, as I look back on the article, I think I mentioned that, but you are absolutely right. That would be the number one thing to do. Marc, what do you think?
Yeah, Erik is right. You go to WeAreSC.com, you get all of your subscriber recruiting information. You get all of your inside nugget information. You go to YouTube and you watch this show, you watch my show, you watch Chris's show, you watch his Erik breakdown of players that USC is getting commitments from. You watch Scott Schrader. If you do all that, your day is pretty much filled. You don't have time for anything else. And if you do, go have a kid.
I will say, Greg, pulling up those like the early Pete Carroll full games sometimes that show up on YouTube, watching some of the 2008 defense, the 2005 offense, some of those things, that's a really fun kind of flashback way to spend time too. You are right about that.
Absolutely. The thing that I want to do hammer on a little bit about what both of you agree upon, and I agree upon it. You know, I'm always amused at people that say, well, you know, if I get a subscription to USC, it's going to cost me yada, 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 $99 or, you know, some special deal. And that's a lot of money. And I think Scott Schrader made a really good point on one of his rant videos, is that if you break it down to how much you're really spending a day, maybe 23 cents a day, for what you get, for what you think you're paying for. I mean, if you go to the gas station, it's what, $50, $60, $70 to fill your tank. And then you're back at it again 2 weeks later. Or if you bought a subscription to the premium USC site, you get, you know, year-round coverage. In fact, some of my friends who said, you know, I'd like to really look at your site, but the cost, I said, do me a favor, go and make a subscription. If you're unhappy, I'll reimburse you. And I would say 10 out of 10 people went and got subscriptions. They said, wow, this is the best deal ever. Because like you mentioned, Erik, people tune in the minute they wake up in the morning, the day, middle of the day, the end of the day. And the message boards are just, you know, are just a frenzy, a lot of fun. A lot of people that care deeply about USC football. And my suggestion to all of you would be, if you like what we do, maybe you don't like some of the opinions that we give, but it gets a lot better also if you become a subscriber. I think it'd be well worth your time. What do you have to lose? If you don't like it, just don't renew it. It's just that simple. All right, let's close things up here with some overtime questions. One is from MRB, is anyone nervous about special teams in 2023 as far as kickoff returns and punt returns? All right, free for all, open for business. I will say I'm not really all that concerned at the moment. I think if they put the right guys in the right spots and don't do anything stupid, as I define what stupid would be, I think they'll be okay. What about the rest of you?
Yeah, I think they have enough options now that no one's going to be forced to line up at kick returner in crucial situations that maybe aren't prepared to handle the situation. So I'm not concerned this year. Just, you know what? It's real easy. If Zachariah Branch isn't catching a returnable kick, fair catch it, start at the 25, give the ball to Caleb. There's nothing to be concerned about.
Touche.
Yeah, just have Caleb go out and fair catch kickoffs. Then you can just
There you
hang,
go.
hang on to it, set it himself, and get going. No, there's no concern. I think that there's guys that can become weapons there for USC.
All right. Also, MRB asks, it says, it's obvious going into the season that the Pac-12 does not want USC to win the conference, go to the playoff, and who knows from there. The refs and the league itself, should it be a concern? Obviously, the Pac-12 refs are brutal already, but will that increase? The league did a job on USC with the end of the schedule. I think it's a difficult thing for the conference to root for teams, especially ones that are not going to be in the conference. But I think that you have to just take it for this year. I would hope that all the potential there of poor refereeing when SC is playing or rooting against SC, I hope it doesn't happen. I don't think it would be good for credibility for the sport in general, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
Anyone, any place, anytime. Isn't that the motto?
I believe it is.
There you go.
I mean, USC is still a Pac-12 program this year. They'd still get the money and all of that stuff if USC goes to the playoff and wins and all that share and everything. So I don't see a reason that you'd want to hurt them. And also I mean we know by now, right? The Pac-12 is not competent enough to put together some elaborate scheme to really do anything, I think, even for or against somebody. So no, every team, and the other thing I want to make a point is if you're complaining about Pac-12 officiating, go look at other conferences, the way other fans talk about officiating in their conferences. The SEC people cannot stand SEC officiating. Big Ten people cannot stand Big Ten officiating. There is no perfect solution to where all of a sudden USC is going to the Big Ten and never going to have a bad call against them again. So it'll still be there no matter where you are.
Yeah, but those two conferences aren't a punchline on ESPN or Fox Sports when they're talking about officiating. The Pac-12. That's the difference.
Yeah, and you know what? Just remember this. I think there was 3 sets of Pac-10 official groups that have been sucked in, and I use that as taken in by the Big Ten for next season. So, that's kind of a under the rug type of thing that's come out a little bit on publicity. Let's move on to from Big Daddy, originally from Inglewood. I think he's talking about the 2024 season with this. With the potential of as many as 17 games per season, how do you see college football accommodating the players in terms of meaningful benefits, more players on scholarship, long-term health care, other things? I think that's pretty well thought out for the most part. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem to be a major push of, we've got to change all this stuff now that we're playing these games. I mean, there's 2 teams that are going to play that many out of 131.
Yeah. Mark, any thoughts?
Great.
Yeah, the only change I could possibly see happening is maybe adding a couple scholarship players just to give a little bit more depth to roster. But like Eric said, you're only going to have 2 teams playing that 17th game. So if they're not extending this down to the lower divisions that have been playing in the playoffs, what's the difference?
All right, question 3 from Trojan the Valley. He touched on something we've already talked about, but he does. I do want to read his question. He was kind enough to submit. He says, panel, in your opinion, what will be the effect of Bronny coming to USC? Bigger crowds and national coverage of our B-ball games, basketball games. Will this arrival have any effect on the football team? I think we talked about this before, but what about the basketball game? Since Trojan in the Valley brought it up, is that going to increase attendance? Mark, I know you go to the games and you cover them. Bigger crowds now, bigger national coverage because of Bronny. How do you see it?
Absolutely. You know, I actually sent the sports information director for basketball, Dave Tuttle, because I told him I'm going to follow up with him at the end of this week. I want to see if season ticket sales kind of increase because of this. But I said, hey, you know, Galen Center might not be packed to the rafters, but I anticipate, you know, 7,000 per game, again, because of who he is and potentially who could be showing up at a game. We're not just talking about LeBron, talking about, you know, guys like Drake, who shows up at high school basketball games. So why not? Yeah, it's going to have an effect.
Well, they averaged about, I think, close to 4,900 a game. I think that's what I read. You know, which would be about what it fills UC Irvine's Brent Event Center. If they got to 7,000, that would obviously be a nice increase, no question about that. But there are other players besides Bronny coming to this. You know, the kid from Georgia is a really lightning point guard. And you know, if you're going to come to see Bronny, you're going to be really said, who's this other kid? They've got some talent. The question is about winning games. And of course, I hate to belabor the point, but I'll do it anyway. I think that you know, when you look at you know, USC winning the conference, you know, Andy Enfield has not won the conference, I think, going into the 10th season, if you correct me on that. And at some point in time, you got to say, are they going to win the conference? I mean, I understand going to the NCAA tournament is a beautiful thing, but, you know, when does the winning the conference not become a relevant factor? Question 4 for Major in Santee, California. I saw that offensive lineman Cameron Johnson has spurned the Trojans for Missouri. Is that a surprise? And why Missouri? That is going nowhere in the SEC. I'll just chime in and say this doesn't come out of the blue. A lot of people were saying that Missouri was right there for him. I think he's probably concerned about getting to the NFL, and why not? But you know what, Missouri, if you're looking at it from just a competition standpoint, maybe he just wants to play against people in the SEC. What do you guys think?
Brandon Jones was the offensive line coach at Houston, and he went to Missouri. So this is a player following his former coach to a new spot. You know, USC had those transfer offensive linemen in around the same time, and sometimes in the transfer portal, it's here that we got one spot for this position, and who wants to fill it, and USC got a good one there.
All right, 2 more questions. I'm going to wrap it up. From the Genius in Las Vegas, what do you make of the Pac-12 unable to secure a television contract? I will just say they better come up with a decent one, because right now it doesn't look real positive. I'll just say that.
Correct. Yes, they don't have a lot of chips to bargain with.
Mark, what do you think?
They're trying to well, here's the issue from the way I understand it. They're going to be doing the majority of their broadcasting with streaming. And you've got, you know, Apple and Amazon who are laying off people left and right. So it's a matter of a timing thing right now with, you know, whomever they're associating with, kind of saying, all right, well, we're going to spend this much money to stream college football games. And I'm sorry that we just laid off, you know, 5,000 people. So it's right now, I think it's just a bunch of red tape. I don't think this media deal is going to save the Pac-12. Whatever it is, it's going to be. But, you know, it's today's in today's economy, it's just the worst time to try and negotiate a TV deal. It's horrible.
And on that positive note, we'll go to the final question from Phil in Burbank, California. Why is SC going after so many defensive backs? Don't they have an overabundance? I will defer to you guys to begin with this comment.
They're going after so many everybody's. I mean, they're going after the best players out there, and over a but right. So when Lincoln Riley is looking at the roster, it's not just right. Not everybody's created equal. It's not, well, we have 12 offensive linemen or whatever that number is. You've got the guys that are going to be stars and huge contributors, and you want as many of those on your team as you can. So just because some guy has cornerback next to his name on the roster, he may not be seen equally as someone else who has cornerback on their name. But yeah, so if this is about the Alabama brothers coming in there are spots where you want to target. And if they saw, I mean, Max Williams moved to kind of that deeper safety spot and opened up to where you just had Jalen Smith and Latrell McCutcheon at that nickel spot. Can you get through a season with just those two at that spot? Or do you want to bring someone in and really potentially push for a starting spot there and make sure you're as locked up and buttoned up as you can be at a really, really key spot for that defense? And so I think bringing a guy in there was pretty critical. I think Jalen Smith's a guy that can play. Latrell McCutcheon got a lot of praise from coaches this offseason. Again, I don't know if you want to go into a season at any position with only two guys being there to get you through the kind of schedule, the kind of season that we certainly anticipate USC having to face.
And not only that, I mean, you're recruiting for the future. I mean, your USC is going to be losing a lot of guys from the secondary potentially after this season. You need to have guys ready to step in and fill in. We're talking about Kalen Bullock. I brought up Jacoby Covington. There's at least two more guys out of that group that I anticipate won't be on the roster next year, whether they're going to the NFL, transferring, whatever the situation might be. So yeah, you need to start backstocking for the future. That's why they're focused on the secondary.
And that's a key thing with Fegans too, right? He's got 4 years. I mean, it's not a 1 year gap. I think that's another thing Lincoln Riley has done really well in the portal with is we need this guy right now, and we're going to have him for 1 year. Also, there's a bunch of guys that they're going to have to really build with.
Yeah, I think the way the game is played offensively now and the way the defenses have to adjust to it and have been doing it for a while, I don't think you can have enough defensive backs the way the game is played in this day and age. So, guys, again, if you have a question or comments for our panel, go to either of the WeAreSC message boards, click on the thread that pertains to Inside the Trojans Huddle, viewer or listener questions. And with that, that'll do it for Tuesday's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle. Until next Tuesday, a big thank you to our panelists, Marc Kulkin and Erik McKinney, and a special big thank you to all of you for watching and listening to Inside the Trojans Huddle. Believe me, it's greatly appreciated. Have yourself a great week. And until then, this is your moderator, Greg Katz, reminding you all to fight on, everybody.